what this would create is that right now it would be Texas Tech, Tulane in Lubbock in the first round, and then you would move on to play Georgia at a neutral site. The point is, I would way rather, if you could get Texas A&M out of that, man, Texas A&M. If you could get Texas A&M out of that deal instead of Georgia or instead of Ohio State and maybe instead of Indiana, that's what I want. Not just, I mean, I know like the rivalry thing is great, but I just think A&M is so much more vulnerable. I'm fine with them being in the top 3 based on what they've accomplished this year, but I think their resume is more assailable. Like there are more holes you can poke in it because they have missed basically the entire top half of the SEC this year. Now, they also beat Notre Dame in South Bend, which is looking like a hell of a win right now. But they have not had quite the gauntlet that some SEC teams have had throughout the year. They've just missed some of the better teams. I'm interested to see what that looks like against Texas when they actually play them. But yeah, that would be my commentary on what you have to say there. But I had not even considered, Bob, if Tech can go and just smoke Tulane in the first round, that would actually help in some ways. Maybe more so than if you said Tech would just work its way into the top 4 and get a bye, not play anybody in the first round, and then lose the first game. Like if they flip-flopped with Georgia or something, and then you had to play Georgia at a neutral and you lost that game, would it have actually done you more good to have the visual of you just blowing out a G5 team? This is a good year to get a G5 team. Like this is not Boise with a historic running back in Ashton Genty last year. This would be a different deal. It appears right now, I mean, famous last words and all that, but it appears right now this is a better year to be getting to G5. So the path to getting into the top 4, I did want to discuss that with Texas Tech just briefly. It's not impossible. I mean, Georgia could certainly lose to Georgia Tech. I think if Georgia makes it to the SEC championship game and they are there in the top 4, which I'm not actually entirely sure how all that's going to break. Should go look at those standings. Would it be Alabama, Texas A&M that is still the matchup as of right now? I'll put it this way. If we get to conference championship weekend and Georgia is still in the top 4, I don't think that they would be dropping under any circumstance. Yeah, Bama and Georgia each have 1 loss, but Ole Miss is in there too. So yeah, I don't know how the 3-way tiebreaker would work out. I'm sure SEC folks are all on top of that. I do not know. I think Georgia, point being, losing in the SEC championship game probably would not drop them below Texas Tech because the committee has said they don't want to punish teams for doing that. And top of the list is damn sure going to be Georgia that they wouldn't punish for doing that. In all likelihood. Texas A&M could definitely lose to Texas. And at that point, I think it'd become really interesting because I'm sure there would be SEC fans that would tell you, hey, their loss is Texas. Texas Tech's loss is Arizona State. Texas is a better team than Arizona State, which, I mean, I do agree with that. I know that they have either the same record or at least the same amount of losses right now. I do agree with that. I think Texas is a better team. But you would also have to point out that Arizona State was fully healthy then and Texas Tech had its backup quarterback, and I think that's what the committee has been saying. So there is a good chance that in that case, Texas Tech would move up into the top 4. I don't think Indiana or Ohio State is losing. If Ohio State did lose to Michigan, so they're down there at 18, would that be enough to drop them out of the top 4? I have my doubts, but, perhaps. I think your best path there is actually, if you're a Texas Tech fan and you really want to be in the top 4 and get a bye, you need to be rooting for Texas. And, yeah, Georgia Tech, too. I think there's a much better chance of Texas beating Texas A&M than there is of Georgia Tech clipping Georgia, based on the way Georgia Tech has been playing lately. So the other thing here is that you have BYU and Utah sitting there at 11 and 12, which I don't get excited if you see that if you're a Big 12 fan. Yes, there are 12 teams in the playoff because you have to include an ACC champion where there's no ACC team in the top 12, and you have to include a Group of 6 champion. There is no Group of 6 champion in the top 12. You got to be in the top 10 to actually make the playoff. So the last team in the field, according to this, is actually Alabama. They're the final at-large selection there. So you're looking at like Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Alabama being the three teams that are keeping BYU and Utah out. But don't just stop there. Here's a part of the problem with the situation that the Big 12 is in. It's that look at the three teams behind BYU and Utah: Miami, Vandy, USC. Those are, if not big brands, I was about to say they're all big brands, and then I'm like, well, I mean, look, yeah, I understand Vandy, but Vandy is a team from the SEC. You know, they've got that SEC patch. They are big brands or teams from big leagues that still have more juice left on their schedule than what BYU or Utah do. And take nothing away from Cincinnati. I'm not saying that's an easy game by any stretch this weekend for BYU, but I don't think the committee will see it in the same eye, certainly, as Vandy having to play Tennessee, as USC having to play Oregon. And then maybe it's akin to Miami playing at Pitt, but Miami does have a game at Pitt. And Miami is one of those teams that should draw your attention this week, because in 2 weeks, Miami has gone from being ranked 18th in the initial ranking, which even for me felt low. That felt pretty harsh to the Hurricanes. And then it was like, oh, well, they jumped up to 15 last week after beating Syracuse. That seems like, kind of a course correction. And now they jumped up another, 2 spots for just beating NC State, who's a very average team. I saw somebody on Twitter this week saying instead of wins above replacement, it should just be wins above NC State, calling them basically the most average team out there. Now Miami's moved up 2 more spots. They blew out 2 average to very below average teams, and they have moved up 5 spots, which tells you the committee is kind of like looking for an excuse almost to put them back in. A lot of the public discourse this week has been about Miami versus Notre Dame. They both have 2 losses, and Miami actually won the head-to-head matchup there. So I fear that the committee is kind of setting this all up to just pull the wool over your eyes. Even if somehow someone did lose in front of BYU and Utah, I feel like the committee is just waiting there, keeping Miami, Vandy, and SC kind of waiting in the wings and just getting their opportunity to do a little Ricky Bobby, shake and bake, and just draft off a Cal and then fly forward. Not Cal the team. That's Cal Norton from Talladega Nights, and just fly in front of BYU and Utah. That's kind of the feeling that I'm starting to get here. And then you do not want Oregon to lose, I think, if you're a BYU fan or a Utah fan this weekend, because if Oregon lost to SC, then I think you could wind up with both of those teams actually in front of BYU and Utah. I think SC would then jump them. And I think Oregon probably is going to stay in front of them, even with the loss, assuming that that's a relatively close game. Now, I do not anticipate that Lincoln Riley is going to win that game, so I don't think that you're going to have to worry about it, but that is something I would at least plant on the radar there, okay? So let's see. Okay, so Oklahoma and Bama. Look, Notre Dame's not losing. Notre Dame losing would be a total and complete shock. They're going to be like 4 touchdown plus favorites each of the next 2 weeks against Syracuse and Stanford. So I think that ship has sailed. If you are sitting there like, how do we crack this thing? You better be an Auburn Tiger, my friends. You better be an Auburn Tiger and hope that they can get Bama, which some weird things have happened in that rivalry. There have been some impressive punching above their weight class performances by Auburn against Alabama lately in that rivalry. Alabama has played a lot of close games this year against some bad teams, a la South Carolina. They lost to Florida State. It's not impossible, but that's one that you would probably need. And then Oklahoma, I don't know. Oklahoma's offense is limited enough that they will probably be in some slugfest where, hey, a couple turnovers go the wrong way. Maybe they could lose, but they're at home against Mizzou and LSU. And that's Mizzou playing with a third-string quarterback. Well, I say that. Bo Perbula. Actually, there are some reports that Bo Perbula may be able to return. So, Mizzou is who you focus in on there. I don't know that LSU is going to give you that kind of effort, a win one for the Gipper sort of thing to get that victory. But that's what you got to be paying attention to, I think, if you're a BYU or a Utah fan. And I hope talking through that has kind of exemplified like why this is a tough proposition. It's a tough proposition to figure out a way for them to squeak in as an at-large. Now, last thing I would point out, look at that bottom row. Houston and Arizona State make it into the top 25. Committee. Shout out to the committee. Mark Harlan. Way to go, my friend. Getting it to the point where we got 5 Big 12 teams here in the top 25 of the college football playoff rankings. They respected the Houston Cougars. Coug fans been wanting respect all season. You got some respect from the committee. And Arizona State. Arizona State holding on against West Virginia, despite somehow giving up a 90-yard touchdown on 3rd and 27 in the fourth quarter. One of the gnarliest things I think I've ever seen. Arizona State's still there, trying to hang on to its quarterback. Well, they're hanging on in the college football playoff rankings right now. Okay. So I like that from the committee. That'll help, at least for the time being, boost the resumes a little bit. You know, that's what long we have accused the committee of shoving some SEC teams in there like that to boost resumes. And this feels like boosting some Big 12 resumes down there. You know, that's not bad. Not bad. I like that. Helps out Texas Tech, right? Texas Tech's played both of them. Okay, let me pop into the rest of the super chats here before I leave. Let's see. Gentle Brutality. Gentle Brutality says, from people I know at Texas Tech, they are going to have big dollar rosters like current every year. Can anyone else in the Big 12 keep up? Maybe the next Oklahoma, the Big 12. Yeah, so a couple things on that. You're hitting on what I was starting to talk about, Gentle Brutality. So apropos there, I know this. Well, I should probably be a little bit careful with what I say, but I know that there have been some internal dilemmas where like people are like, okay, this year with rev share, right? They set up, hey, rev share caps, $20.5 million. Most schools are putting like 14 or 15 of that to football. And then above that, any NIL deal was supposed to be fair market value. And it can't just be pay for play. It can't just be, hey, here's $1 million just to play. It's got to be, no, you've got to go sign autographs and you're only getting paid what the fair market value is for that. And the College Sports Commission, using this NIL Go program, was going to review all of those. And if they weren't up to snuff, if it was too much money and just over the top, they would be struck down. And I think a lot of schools really wanted to believe in that and say, hey, that's going to be great because that will create like kind of a cap, a limit to what most people can spend. It will turn it much more into what it used to be, where then it's like, hey, just what recruiting advantages do you have? Because everyone will have somewhat equal money, and then it's about how you manage it and stuff and whatever. As great as that sounds, I think most people realize that was probably naive. And I think if you didn't realize it before, you're definitely realizing it now, that if you want to keep up, you're going to have to just keep trying to spend over that. I mean, it's going to be over your rev share cap every year. If you want to compete with teams that are really going for it right now in the sport. And so Texas Tech is one school where you know that the money spigot is going. Money spigot go burr right now, you know? So they've got the money available if there's going to be no fear of, you know, getting hammered by CSC with like, you know, punishment or something handed down. And Tech is certainly operating like that's not going to be the case. So whether you believe, you know, there were some reports out there, it was like a $40 million roster. I think now most people would tell you more in the range of what, like 25, 26, 27, 28, something like that for Tech's roster this year. Obviously that's still way above the NIL rev share cap, or the rev share cap. So I think that's going to be the bar, and we'll see if other Big 12 teams can meet it. I think it's going to be really stressful for a lot of Big 12 teams to come even anywhere in the ballpark if that is going to continue to be allowed, which, yeah, it seems like it is. Some of this is, if you go read, Front Office Sports did a story about CSC and NIL Go and how they were trying to review some of these cases. That was back in October, and they're backed up. Nobody's getting answers. Players felt like they were missing out on NIL deals because they couldn't get an answer on it. So predictably, it's been kind of a mess anyway, even with the outlet that's trying to go through and do right by everyone with this. So I don't think it's going to work. Thank you, Gentle Brutality. Garrett, what's up, Garrett? Garrett says Texas Tech will be the number 4 seed. I want A&M in the second round. Well, Tech's going to be the 4 seed. Okay, so I guess you're saying what you would want then is, so if A&M loses to Texas and then they fall back to 5 and Texas Tech moves up to 4, then hey, A&M gets to go host Tulane in College Station, win that game, and then go play Tech somewhere on a neutral, one of the neutral sites. I'm all for that, man. I would love to see Texas Tech play Texas A&M just for the pageantry of it all, if nothing else. Plus, yeah, I think Texas Tech could beat them. College football needs it, man. College football needs it. Bob, dream scenario: A&M loses twice and comes to Lubbock. Yeah, I don't. I if you just followed me, I don't think it needs to be loses. Well, I guess what it would be. Okay, I see what you're saying, Bob. So it would be lose to Texas and then lose the SEC championship game, because if they lost to Texas and then beat Georgia or Bama in the SEC title game, or Ole Miss, whoever it would be, then perhaps they get vaulted back up and would not be the 5 seed. So yes, lose to Texas, losing the SEC title game, they're reeling. Then they'll go beat Tulane, and then they got to worry about playing the Red Raiders. Yes, I'm with you. Garrett, full strength Texas Tech chances they win it all. I would direct you, I'll give you an answer here, Garrett, but I would direct you also back to, I did a video on this specifically. How long ago was that, guys? It was when I referenced this a lot, so you may have heard it before, Garrett, but Bud Elliott pointed out how ESPN's S&P Plus in 2019 showed a separation of about 3 touchdowns between number 1 and number 17 in the country. This year, it was only 7 points. So it had been, you're like 66% closer at number 17 to the number 1 team in the country, meaning there's less separation between the teams at the top and everyone else, so you can be more competitive. At full strength, if you're telling me Baron Morton is going to remain there healthy, and I'll consider healthy what he is right now, which is still him limping, by the way. Like, he's still not very mobile, but he is at least able to stand back there and throw the ball. Like, he can be a drop back passer for you. 5-10%, but I wouldn't scoff at that. Like, that's, I think, much higher than it's been for anybody in the Big 12 in a long time. If you were telling me, like, I got Baron Morton at full strength from the beginning of the year health, and if you're saying full strength Texas Tech, like Skylar Gill Howard is back, maybe I could bump that up to more like a 20, something like that. And I know, like, you'll hear those numbers, and if you're a diehard fan, you might get mad at that. I'm stressing to you, like, I would have given Arizona State last year a 0.1% chance to win the national championship, right? So it's, in terms of how much higher I have gone with this, it is much higher chance, is what I'm saying, than what it's been in the past.